Hi, welcome back. We have our MuseScore project, which is just a bunch of empty bars in a whole bunch of different instruments, and we want to look at moving around and seeing what's happening in the user interface. So in this section, we obviously have the score view, and we want to be able to move around our score easily. So the first place to start with is the mouse, where if we use our mouse wheel, we can move up and down the score. Right? That's fairly intuitive, and I think it makes sense. If you're on a normal page, you could scroll up and down. The other very useful one is by holding Shift and then using our mouse wheel, we can scroll from left to right. And you can imagine how that would be very useful as well. And then the other mouse wheel one that's really useful is Control and the mouse wheel, which is to zoom in and out. And I think that's fairly standard over a lot of different types of software. All right, so we've got scrolling up and down with mouse wheel, Shift and mouse wheel to go left and right, and Control and mouse wheel to zoom in and out. And we can go to various different places wherever we want to go just with those three combinations. Another really useful thing to do in terms of viewing the score is down here on the right side we have page view, and if we click that we have two other options, which are the continuous view horizontal and the continuous view vertical. I find the continuous view horizontal is very useful when we're working with music. You know, we're inputting notes and we're moving stuff around and copying and pasting and being creative. And only once we come back to formatting our parts, then we come back to the page view. But it does start automatically in page view. And so let's put this in continuous view. And now you can see I've still got all of my instruments, but as I scroll along, I've just got one immensely long page. Essentially, it's an infinitely long page, and it shows us what the instruments are on the left side. It shows their key signature, time signature. So it's always got us, you know, we always know where we are and what we're doing. So this is a very useful feature, and this means that I can just navigate using up and down to the instrument that I want, and then left and right to go in time, using, of course, Shift and mouse wheel. All right, let's have a little look at the rest of the user interface. On the left side here, we have the panels, and we start with the palettes panel. And this is where we add lots of things to our scores. Not notes, but all kinds of other things that you might need. And if you can't find anything in these ones, you can always go to Add Palettes, and there's probably one there with some of the rarer things that you might need. But we'll work our way through these palettes as well, I'm sure. Next to that is the layout palette. This has all of our instruments and our different marking places. So it really is the layout of our score and what we're seeing. And it allows us to hide things and change instruments and all kinds of things like that, as well as add instruments. And then there's the properties panel, which allows us to, if we click on a particular thing, it allows us to change the properties of that thing. And if we have nothing clicked on, then it allows us to change things like page settings and style settings and what is shown in our view at the moment. All right, then we have our main toolbar at the top. Honestly, I have barely ever used this. Because I've got everything down, or almost everything down, on keyboard shortcuts. So most of the time you will not need this bar. A couple of things on the left perhaps, maybe some of the rare things if you're writing double flats and double sharps that maybe don't have keyboard shortcuts, and possibly first voice and second voice. But anyway, it's fine to keep it there. It is useful to have it up there. The other one we have is on this top bar. We have the home, which is where you might click on there by accident and you feel like you've lost everything. If you just go back to score, there you're back in the score that you were on. And then later on, we'll get to publish. So it is a nice sort of progression of how you're going to work. But we spend a lot of time in a score, of course. We have the parts and the mixer. We'll get to those later, not to worry. And then over here, we have the transport bar to play back our score once we have some music. Of course, there's nothing there right now. And that is pretty much it. So hopefully that's given you a little introduction to the MuseScore user interface and moving around your score. Just a couple of two more things that are very useful. One is the end button on your computer keyboard, which takes you to the end of your score. So if you want to work on the end, but obviously the more useful one is to go back to the beginning, which is home. And those also make sense. Home and end to the beginning and the end of the score. All right. So we'll see you in the next one, when we just have a look at our music and how we're going to enter it into the MuseScore, because it's not just as simple as taking the notes from there and putting them in the instruments. We need to plan this out a little bit. See you then.